Hey, you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool.
Hear me all right?
Yep, all good.
Perfect.
Thanks for doing this on such short notice. I mean, I took a look at some of the rules, the rule, and then, of course, one of them was rejected today. The one the Broncos wanted to do.
Which one was that?
That was the one where instead of doing kickoffs, they get the ball at their own 35-yard line.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
Yeah, that has been rejected. Of the 30 teams or whatever, 32 teams, they need at least 24 votes.
Yeah.
And they didn't get it. Even though like eight people on the competition committee, 7 of them voted for it. So it didn't get the votes. So I don't know if we want to talk about that today or else that's going to be, somebody else's podcast. But
hold on, I'm just reading this right now. So shot down the onside kick and tabled the overtime proposal until May.
But by doing that, and they also made permanent the kickoff rule changes that were implemented last year. So you can kiss, making consistent, or nobody made it consistently, but onside kicks, like realistically, the game is going to be basically over if you're relying on an onside kick.
Right. So we can still so we'll still talk about. So I think then I think we'll still kind of discuss them, at least like kind of in theory, as just kind of like an idea, like like obviously like doesn't get passed, but this is what was suggested. What do we think about it, kind of thing. And then.
Right. And then anything else you want to talk about? Just
well, I think so I don't know if they'll mention it or not, because I texted Jacob today to see what they were talking about today. We could bring up I think we can probably, if we want, we can lead off with the announcement of the Thursday night game.
Oh yeah, the Packers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they'll talk about it or not, but basically I think if we lead off with it and then they talk about it, we can either cut it, or depending on what they say and what we say, we can just kind of leave it in and just roll with it,
Okay.
So I think we talk about that. It also looks like I'm just reading this article at NFL. They outlawed blindside blocks.
Yeah, they outlawed the blindside blocks, but at the same time, they were making those calls, I feel, pretty consistently.
I thought so too. Honestly, I didn't think that was like still a.
Exactly. They were calling those pretty, even a lot of times I felt that the block was totally illegal, but they still threw the flag. So I feel that this is just making it more on paper, making it more solidified. That's just what I think.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to make much of a difference.
Yeah. So I think, so let's. And
then, of course, the big one we'll talk about the instant replay of whether or not that's going to.
Right. And then I don't know if you had any like ideas about like stuff that you would like, just like ideas that, stuff that we might want to see, ideas about like rule changes or changes just in general we'd like to see that we think would, make the game better or anything. So yeah, that's what I think we'll do. That should be plenty, I think.
Cool.
All right. Welcome into another edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Dan Kotnick. Alongside me for today's episode is my partner, as always, Mr. Chris Schimmel. We are here on a Thursday talking Packers football on this wonderful Pack-A-Day podcast that we have for you today. Tons of stuff to get to, Chris. Packers related and football in general related. I think we'd be remiss, though, if we didn't discuss coming up today. We've got Sweet 16 basketball action coming up. How is your bracket doing, Chris, so far?
Glad you brought that up because me and two of my coworkers, we have a little competition where we just put $5 in, and whoever wins the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I was winning after the first round. Second round, I'm in second, but it's pretty neck to neck the way we do points and all that. Overall, my bracket's doing great. The Wisconsin teams really screwed me. Marquette and Madison both bowing out early. That really screwed up mine. Didn't screw up my coworker Brad actually had Marquette beating Gonzaga. And I'm like, oh man, thank God that that's gonna make my life easier. But yeah, how about yours?
Oh, it's absolute garbage at this point. I still have Virginia winning it all, so there's always a chance for that. You picked Virginia too?
Well, the reason it was Virginia Duke in the finals, and I thought, all right, I don't really have much allegiance to either team. Who do I want to pick? And then I thought, well, you know what? Thomas Jefferson founded the University of Virginia, so I made that my tiebreaker.
That's fair enough. I won't judge you for it. I think in one other one I picked Michigan State to win. I had a couple of different wild cards. Like I had like Murray State in the Final Four and everything like that. So that's really killed me.
A buddy of mine had Wofford in the Final Four. I'm like, you guys are really going nuts on this. Like,
well, hey, I mean, if that kid shoots, at least 2 of those threes that he missed, they actually probably beat Kentucky, and we could be considered, talking about them moving forward. But basketball out of the way, Chris, we'll have plenty to lament about that later. We want to dive into some of the news and notes from this week and today. The first one that I think we wanted to kind of talk about was the news that broke earlier this week about the start of the 2019-2020 NFL season, that it's going to be the rematch from week number 1 last year, but new venue, different day, Thursday night, September 5th in Soldier Field. The way for the NFL to kick off their 100th season with the oldest rivalry in Soldier Field. We got the benefit of having our 100-year anniversary at home, so we get to return the favor to Chicago this year. Your thoughts on facing what's probably the favorite for the NFC North crown again in the Chicago Bears, Chris, on a Thursday night opening week like this with a brand new head coach and brand new faces on both sides of the ball?
Oh yeah, that's why this game is going to be so intense. This game is going to be more intense than usual, specifically because brand new coach coming in, and this is just going to be a completely different Packer team when it comes to identity. Because there's going to be so many faces, like Cobb and Matthews gone. You're really not gonna. You really don't know what to expect. And of course, the Bears are going to be favored coming out. They won the NFC North last year. And of course, they have a great defense, and who knows? What happened to what could happen to them is what happened to the Vikings. So you go all the way up top, and then you completely obliterate. But I don't see that happening. And overall, I feel it's too early to make predictions of what you think the score is going to be. But of course, I'm going to think the Packers are going to pull it off.
Well, I think I saw the early odds have the Bears as a 4-point favorite.
Not surprised.
Very, very early on. And yeah, I think really, I never like playing divisional games
that early
in week number 1. Yeah, even just early. I think that, divisional games are just way, way too important when it comes down to, playoffs at the end of the year. And
I agree with you on that completely, except I feel 100 years, this is a special event. So if you are going to have 2 teams in the same division play one another, opening day, Packers, Bears, what can be better than that?
Right. I mean, really, not to kind of go all Yankees Red Sox on everybody, but you know, if you were to pick one single game, if one single matchup to kind of embody the history of the NFL, it really starts and ends with Packers Bears, doesn't it? What would be a second to that? Is there anything?
I thought you were gonna throw a wild card out there and say something different. I thought you were gonna.
I mean, honestly, literally the only other one that came to mind as if you were trying to take a representation of the NFL, and I think what you're looking for is something that spans the decades, and it's franchises that are historic, maybe haven't been there the entire time, but have a big history in the NFL. The only other one I thought of was like Steelers Cowboys. But again, that's me trying to find something that's not Bears Packers. You know what I mean?
And also, if this was, 2013, 2012, I could see a lot of people across the league rolling their eyes. But now that the Bears are actually good, this will actually be a good game because a lot of traditional rivals, wouldn't, like, for example, like Raiders Steelers back in the 70s. That was a huge rivalry. Would that really be all that exciting today? Or of course, even the Bengals and the Browns had a great rivalry. But I mean, would you put that opening day?
No.
Of course, now that the Browns are a little bit better. But you know what I mean? So with the fact that the Bears and the Packers, this might be a good game that everyone will have marked on their calendars, I think it has to be number one. And
then and then also you throw in what happened in week number 1 last year at Lambeau Field with those two same teams. It kind of makes it a no-brainer that it has to be the rematch in Chicago for this year. So that's what's coming up. We have that to look forward to. At least now we know, we don't have to wait until April to get the whole schedule. We at least know when the first game's going to be, because that's, I think, kind of, one of the big questions is, are you going to be playing that Sunday night game? Are you going to be playing on Monday? Are you going to be on the road this year? I think this will be the first time they're on the road, and maybe for the first week. I'm trying to think back to it since 2010? Because the last time I remember starting on the road was
2013. They started against the 49ers, I believe.
You might be right.
And then maybe even in 2012 as well, I think they played the 49ers at Candlestick Park. That's just what I think. Because I remember 2013, that's when Matthews hit Kaepernick way out of bounds and started that brawl.
I remember that.
Battle. That I think that may have been the last time. Could be wrong, but – oh, wait a minute. What about 2014? They played the Seahawks.
Yes. No, of course. You're right. That's exactly right. After the Seahawks – they won the Super Bowl.
They lost 36-16 that first game of the year. And then, of course, the Packers turned it around and kicked their ass for 57 minutes in the NFC Championship game. But I don't want to talk about that.
You're right. The good call. Yeah, that was their home opener after the Super Bowl. Thankfully, Chicago's not celebrating a championship for this Thursday night opening game.
But since we are talking about great home openers, I just wanted to hear, what is your favorite week 1 game of the Packers? Favorite home opener for the Packers ever? Ever. That you actually witnessed.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, if we're going to take last year out of it, because I think that's kind of the pinnacle right now, but I also don't want to be captive of the moment. If it wasn't that one, I would probably say I think it was 2 years ago against the Seahawks. That was a Sunday night game too. I'd never heard the place that loud that consistently against the Seahawks. I think that was maybe 2015 or 2016. I think. Okay. Yeah, it was the year. It was 2015. I'm sorry, it was 2014 because it was after the NFC Championship game loss. I'm pretty sure. Because I remember we brought a bottle of champagne that we were gonna pop at the NFC Championship game, and then we popped it after that win. So it was somewhere right around there. I'm getting my years all mixed up on me now. What about you?
The one that really means a lot to me was 2011, the game after they won the Super Bowl against the Saints.
That's a good one.
Where they were criticizing the Packers for not like having team workouts and blah, blah, blah. And Rodgers threw 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, and it was just an absolute shootout. To me, that game was probably my favorite.
That's a really I had not thought about that, but I would probably
108-yard touchdown run.
Yep.
That was just a great game. The last 2 Super Bowl champions, and it was 42-34. Great game. That was my personal favorite.
That's a really good one. And then you add in the goal line stand at the end
when they couldn't stop anything, but they finally did on like the 1-yard line. And I remember Hawk had the pass interference call with like no time left to put him at the 1-yard line. Yeah, that was my favorite until maybe this last year. But I don't know. It's tough to beat that one.
Yeah. Oh, there's been a good handful of them to pick from. So later on, April, usually when we figure out when that first game will be in Lambeau. Chris, we wanted to talk about the news coming in this week. Obviously, the owners, coaches at the meetings in Arizona the past couple of days, and the big stuff coming out of there are usually all of the rule changes or possible rule changes or rule changes that were considered by the competition committee. And a couple that were on the table being discussed about that were, had chances to be looked at were really big changes to the game as we know it. And I think at least I kind of got caught up in the reports that, there was a lot of push for these changes to be made. And so I kind of thought that we were going to get more or see more. But either way, what we've seen out of the meetings the past couple of days, there was talk about changing the overtime rules where both teams will get a possession in overtime, no matter what happens. And then also looking at pass interference, obviously that coming out of the NFC Championship game, I think most notably the past year, having that as something that could be reviewed possibly by coaches challenge or by a booth review. And then also the interesting proposal with the onside kicks to make it a little bit more like the AAF, where you get the 4th and long to convert and keep the ball. So let's just I want to look at them a little bit broadly, Chris. Your take on, let's start with the one that I think was probably getting the most push and has gotten the most kind of, support is the look at, or I should say, the expansion of replay to take a look at pass interference and also roughing the passer and whatnot. Your thoughts on that? Is this something that you would like to see done? Is this something that you are happy that that's going to be part of the game?
This reminds me of if you've ever listened to Steve Zabin, how he kept saying technology and review is just ruining the sport. In some ways, I agree. I think that they're trying to make the game too perfect where, you can catch everything to the point where referees are going to be robots. They can capture everything. But at the same time, I understand where they're coming from, especially after the Saints game where they just rioted and got robbed. And really, they should have been there because they would have made a more interesting Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I overall, I just feel that people are going to be relying too much on replay and challenges and reviews and use it as a crutch, I think, too often. Or if they do this, they're really going to have to limit how often you can use it, And I completely understand because I looked at it, and I read some articles. The proposal represent a massive shift in philosophy in its own right, and more importantly would address a type of mistake that affects the outcome of games more than any other penalty. Defensive pass interference is a spot foul, and over the past 3 seasons, it has cost teams an average of 15.2 yards per call. Those fouls total only 9% of all penalties, but because of the yardage involved, they represent 70% of penalties, with the largest impact on the league's internal version of a win problematic metric. So that's it right there, is the fact that it only happens only 9% of penalties have to do with these huge pass interference calls, but when they're made, they're huge. And that's, I think, what they're trying to get down. But, hopefully if they do something, it's not going to be written in stone. It's going to be kind of like the roughing the passer, what happened this last year, where they'll test it out. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully that they can amend it, and get rid of it if it's a complete failure.
At this point, it's like they want the game to get to the point where everything can be reviewed.
Yeah.
But they don't want to just say everything's reviewable. Although Washington did propose that change, that any call on the field can be reviewable.
No.
That was immediately shot down. But at a certain point, though, where there's got to be a line drawn where either we're going to be okay with basically everything being reviewable, or we take it all the way back, or not all the way back, but really cut it. And really, for me, what it kind of comes down to outside of just what you can review, is why are they still proposing that it needs to be a coach's challenge for some of these things? Because if you're making it now that you can expand it to all these different things, what do you have coaches challenges for anymore? Scores and turnovers are automatically reviewed. You don't have to throw a challenge flag for that anymore. Everything under 2 minutes, you don't throw a challenge flag for. Well, now if you've got, if you're trying to make this reviewable, what point is it that we just don't have? We have like what they have in the AAF, that you have the sky judge kind of watching and looking for these things, almost like VAR in soccer, where somebody's watching for this and makes the call not on the field. Why are coaches even still challenging if this is where we want to take this? And then we throw in roughing the passer and penalty and unnecessary roughness calls. If there's all of this reviewable and you only have 2 challenges to use, why are we still putting the onus on coaches to use those challenges correctly? Why not just have either, everything's reviewable, and you have a referee whose job is basically to say in the ear of the head referee, hey, we missed this. This is the call you need to make,
Yeah, and not just that. Like, if this is happening in the NFL, what's going to prevent this from happening in every other major sport? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if this happens, this game is going to last longer than a baseball game.
Well, see, personally, I don't really care too much about that, because if it's getting the call right, I'd rather them take an extra 45 seconds or a minute But
if you can review every single play, basically, those are going to add up. It's going to be absolutely maddening.
Well, I think that there's a slippery slope kind of argument to it that I don't necessarily think is there, because yeah, you might get a couple of outliers where, everything's getting reviewed, but really, how many times are we looking at a game? How many times are we watching a game and you look and say that needs to be reviewed, or they missed that call? For me, I think outside of things that aren't already going to be reviewed or don't get reviewed, maybe 4 or 5 times, on average. And if you get it down to a system where, soccer, you've got it figured out in maybe a minute and a half. They look at everything and you make the decision. If you've got a judge that's dedicated to making these decisions like this, And that's the whole thing. I could see it happening, within a 45-second period of here's the call. Or even if you wanted to do this, if you wanted to make this change and say you need to make the call within 45 seconds. If you're taking longer than 45 seconds to look at the video, then it's inconclusive.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like if in baseball where people are in New York City are the ones who are making the call.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can do almost the same thing in the NFL to the point where you barely even need referees. Just have a play. People will just call up and say, yeah, this should have been called. Call it. I just don't understand this. I feel that people are trying so hard to make the game perfect and flawless to the point where they're just going to end up shooting themselves in their own foot. Just like what happened with the Clay Matthews sack or the hit on Kirk Cousins and Alex Smith. They're trying to make the game so perfect and safe that it ends up becoming almost unwatchable. And I just feel that this is just going to be a recipe for disaster, I think.
Well, I think the NFL has kind of fallen on its own sword in a way because we didn't notice these things, or at least these things, really didn't become kind of, an issue, at least. Well, all right, let me backtrack on that a little bit. I can't say that they weren't brought up or issues because I wasn't around. So I can't say that for sure. But it seems like with more cameras, slow motion, you're catching everything now. Everything is being seen. I mean, every catch can be dissected by a person sitting on their couch. And so if your fan base is screaming about one missed call that could affect their chance to go to the Super Bowl or not, you've got a decision to make that either the fan base is going to sit here and say, we got screwed because I'm sitting here on my couch 500 miles away from the game and I can tell that the referee made this call, and I could call right now to Lambeau Field and say, you missed this call. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, if I can do that, then why can't they do that? At least that's the argument that I would put towards that.
I know, and even then, nothing's going to be perfect. Because how many times have you seen a referee review a play, and then they still somehow get it wrong?
Oh, no. Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like the Fail Mary, for God's sake. It's like, how do you watch that, and then you still get it wrong?
No, you're right. You'll never get it perfect, but that's it'll only be perfect. But I think at least chasing that perfection is what.
Yeah. Another key statistic I found out. Of the 19 pass interference calls that most impacted win probability during the 3-season period, 13 occurred in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter or overtime. So they always tend to happen at the end of the game. And of course, just like a bad movie, the ending it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth that could ruin the entire experience for you. So like I said, it's like a double-edged sword. There's no way to grab it.
Yeah, no. And, with that too, we were going to kind of talk about changes that we'd like to see proposed in the NFL. One of mine is, I think, limiting pass interference down to a 15-yard penalty. It should be something that I think needs to get more play at some of these meetings. And I'm actually surprised that it doesn't get more attention.
I will. This is what I think. If it's a penalty where a receiver is running down the field and he turns and tries to find the ball, and then he ends up coming back to try to get it because it was underthrown, and the defensive back, of course, bumps into him, then I believe that should be a 15-yard penalty because, of course, it's underthrown. You had to come back to the ball. What's the defensive back supposed to do? However, if it's blatantly where the defensive back is like tackling the receiver, then I think it should be at the spot of the foul.
Right, but then where do you make that judgment call of, was it underthrown? Was it because now you've got referees that are trying to judge where the ball is in comparison to where the player is, and was the player making a move on the ball? Or I think if you just cut with penalties, I think you just cut the ball.
Mm-hmm.
it's this. It's not going to be, oh, it happened in the end zone, so we put it at the 2-yard line. It's 15 yards no matter what. Now, if you're a defensive back and you want to tackle every single time, well, that's sure, that's your kind of prerogative, but people find a way to use the rules however they can.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then also the fact that offenses is, people have been saying it's more of an offensive league. Like for like every decade, it gets more and more offensive. So any rule to me that helps defense, I'd be mostly for. And,
no, that's fair enough.
One rule that I really am just sick of, not just if it's my team, the Packers playing, but any other team, is overtime rules.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
that got brought up.
And not just the overtime rules, but the fact that there's still a rule that allows teams to frickin' tie. Like who? Like I think the NFL is the last major sports league in North America to still allow teams to tie.
No, hockey has ties.
Hockey? Oh.
Hockey has ties. If it's
even college football got rid of that back in the 80s?
Yeah, true.
I just don't understand how they still allow NFL teams to tie.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, especially in this day and age, if you can't figure out a way to score a touchdown or even a field goal within a 10-minute period with the way that the rules kind of in the game helps out offenses, I don't know if you maybe deserved to win.
Keep playing until somebody wins. I don't care if you have to sleep overnight. Just keep playing until you win. That's not a big point for me. Especially when like last year the Packers, they tie the Vikings, but it was at home, so that's more of a loss.
Yeah, that's
come back to bite you.
That's true. And I think really maybe something that can, solve both of our issues is what a lot of people say. Why not just make it college overtime?
Yes.
Why are we not just making this college overtime rules? I mean, everyone complains about, the offense, this offense didn't get a chance to be out on the field. We didn't get to see this, we didn't get to see Aaron Rodgers go down and try and answer.
Yeah, look at the Patriots Chiefs, what happened in the AFC Championship game. Perfect example.
And it seems like people just dance, these rules, they kind of dance around, not wanting to make it college. Well, if it's a field goal, you still get a chance. And, if it's a touchdown, then, now we'll give the other team a chance to take. Why not just make it college football overtime? It's the most exciting overtime that there is, personally, in my book. It doesn't take that much longer, typically. I mean, at most, it usually goes maybe 3 overtimes at most. And it gives you exactly what the NFL wants, and that's more scoring.
Oh, yeah, and just imagine for a second, you have 2 teams going into overtime. The first one kicks a field goal. Now your team is up, needing a touchdown. I mean, that would be absolutely nuts. So I completely agree with that. And even then, if they can't do anything to make overtime better, I honestly think why not just make it 10 minutes or 12 minutes, just keep playing until the clock hits 0. So if you score, the other team gets the ball. You have until the clock hits 0. Just do that if you can't think of anything better. Because when the Patriots scored and ran away with the AFC title, I just turned off the TV in disgust.
Yeah, it's tough to watch. It's tough to watch the Patriots win at all, but it's also tough to watch us. I mean, you go back to the not the NFC Championship game, the divisional game against the Cardinals a couple of years ago. Where there's the 2 4th down conversions, and you tie the game up, and then you watch Larry Fitzgerald run about 70 yards, to basically win the game for the Cardinals. The other one that was put on the table, it really didn't have much support, really, outside of, interestingly, had the support of the competition committee, or at least most of the competition committee. Not much support outside of it was the onside kick rule of implementing the idea that the AAF kind of brought in the 4th and 15 at your own 35. Personally, for me, if you were to do this, I say go all out and you get rid of kickoffs in general. No more kickoffs. And if you want to do this, every team, after you score, you put it at the 50-yard line and you say you have to make it to the 35 to keep this going. And it's basically like make it, take it. The offense can stay out there for a half hour if they keep scoring and converting and going. I mean, I know that it's crazy. It is. I understand it's crazy, and it's not legitimately what I want. But just think about an NFL.
Think about an NFL. What? My Lord.
But think about, I mean, just think about if you can let your imagination wander. Think about an NFL game where the game is based so much on moving forward, advancing, gaining ground possession away from your opponent, getting first downs, that kind of trench mentality of, gaining ground on your opponent. And now you score and you continue to keep advancing until they actually stop you. I think I know that it's crazy, but I think that would be kind of cool to see. I know, but in a weird alternate reality.
You can't just throw away special teams. To me, special teams is probably the most important plays.
Well, I mean, you would still have punts, you would still have kicks, and I mean, really, at this point with kickoffs, they're shading it out of the game to begin with. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but there's been a sharp decline in kicks that are actually returned anymore, and so why not just give us more offense? And that's exactly what we want to see, anyways. That's the Joker in me. Chaos.
Well, the thing about the onside kick is that I think it was from 1992 to 2017. Onside kicks were recovered 21.2% of the time. Last year, only 7.7%. So it's way down. So I can understand, I think it was the Broncos that came out and wanted this. And, I understand where it is. You start at your own 35, 4th and 15, you have to convert. It's a huge gamble. And so, but it was rejected, of course. But 7 of the 8 people on the competition committee voted for it. So there is some people who are with it. What do you think?
Well, the thing that I think take out of that is that Mark Murphy is one of the ones to vote for that. He's part of that competition committee.
Yeah.
John Merritt was apparently the only one that shot the idea down, but it's interesting that you have the competition committee, which is a mix of owners, general managers, and coaches. Mike Tomlin and Sean Payton are a part of this too, that they would be interested in something like this. And I think maybe a vote like this, if you take a step back away from it and try to see the forest through the trees a little bit, is that maybe it was something that they passed through to kind of give their approval to the mass to just kind of get a feel for how people would react to a change as drastic as something to the onside kick that really hasn't seen, anything kind of change to it drastically. And then also, as I said, you're kind of getting rid of kickoffs in general. And so I think maybe they kind of are just testing the waters to see how much can we really, affect one of the core aspects of how a game is run. Because, that's something that, at least even from just a television standpoint, that's one of those natural moments of, demarcation of, going to the next series is the kickoff. Can we make changes to that? So
yeah,
I don't know if it maybe shows support for it, but maybe just to kind of see where you stand with it.
Well, also the fact that you only can do it once a game, and of course it has to be the fourth quarter. So it's not like it's going to be happening all the time. So I don't think it's that bad. I don't know what the exact vote is because I think you have to get 24 votes in order for it to pass. I don't know where specifically it was, if it was really that close, because hopefully it was, because I think that it would be interesting. Of course, like I said, always use the upcoming season as a test. If it works, keep going with it. If it's not, get rid of it. That's the beauty of it.
Well, and that's why I also like the appeal of what the AAF is trying to do, because then you can kind of, nonchalantly see how some of these different changes maybe affect the game and how people react to them being in the game. And that's probably a reason, because I think there was a lot of positive feedback about how the AAF did that with the onside kicks. So as we wrap up, Chris, just last kind of thing, if you were on the competition committee, what is something that you would offer up to the competition committee as something that you would like to see changed to the game of football?
Well, we just talked about overtime rules are my number one thing. That just comes off my head right at the top. Other than that, what do you think?
The only other one that I could think of, and it's not really that big of an issue, is, and I was just kind of doing some reading on this, is fumbling out of the end zone, resulting in a turnover or score. I think, it's not anything too big, but I think it would be beneficial to the NFL to maybe just review, kind of see how that plays into things, because you've had a rash of these incidents where, players are taking more aggressive chances at the end zone and balls getting fumbled out of the end zone, resulting in turnovers. I think maybe, you change it up where the ball just gets placed back at a certain point, whether it's out of...
I think it was 2013 against the Redskins. James Jones reaching for the pylon, fumbles, ball hits the pylon, touchback. I think like that, it should be almost at the 1 yard line or 1 inch. I think that's what it should be. So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, and like I said, not one that I would go down a hill for, but if we were trying to think of something else to throw out there, that's I think where I would start. So lots more coming up with the Pack-A-Day podcast in the next several weeks, as we always say. And we really, truly mean it, because, now as the calendar starts to get ready for April, we are officially in draft mode here at the Pack-A-Day podcast. We have been for several weeks already, but it's really going to start ramping up here in the next couple of weeks as we get ready for the NFL draft coming up in April. So make sure you stick with us each and every day for a new episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. Make sure that you go on, like us, rate, review the podcast. It's a huge help to us. You can follow Chris and myself on social media, on Twitter especially, at DK All The Way for myself. For Chris, he is at Chris Schimmel. Let us know what you think about the rule changes that coming down from the competition committee. Our ideas, what are your ideas? We'd love to hear from you and see what you say. So for my partner, Chris Schimmel, Dan Kotnick, signing off from the Pack-A-Day podcast and finishing off, as always, with a big Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go. And the Bears still suck.
Nice. That was good. I totally forgot to set a timer for us, but I think that was at least like 40 minutes, I think, solid.
No way.
Yeah. Because
I was afraid we weren't going to have enough for 20.
Oh, no. Because I was trying to look back, because I sent you the text that I invited you in at like 7:52. And so I was giving us some all right, let's say we started at 7:55. We're probably at 40 minutes of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, that was good. It was all, and it wasn't like we were, there was no filler. It was all set. Oh.
Yeah, it just reminds me of baseball, how when you watch it on TV, you have the batter's box and it shows where the pitch is. You have a feeling that someday the home umpire is going to be your only job is if a player is running home, if they're safe or out. That's it. You don't even need to call strikes or balls because we have the batter's box right there. I'm always thinking, when are they going to actually do that? Because baseball, there's so many umpires that I feel it's ridiculous.
And umpires that have their own special strike zones and,
yeah.
Make the calls based on what's happening in the game. No, if it's a strike, it's a strike. If it's a ball, it's a ball. No matter if it's the first or the ninth inning.
Right.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind seeing that. I'd like to see how that kind of works.
Yeah, just have the home umpire be all right, your only job, if it's a close tie at home, call safe or out, and then of course it'll be reviewed.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Dude, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to do I'm ready to get into these draft stuff
Yeah.
coming up. At least because we don't have to like think of our own topics. Because like I was kind of like worried. I'm gonna like eventually we're gonna run out of like we're gonna sit here and we're gonna have a day that we don't know what to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we have like a way to kind of like look ahead and pre-plan out. And I'm super jazzed that we get the day of the draft episode and you get to do like the whole preview and stuff. I've been doing like those like mock draft simulators like at work. I'm just sitting there doing nothing. I'm ready for this.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. All right, man.
All right, cool. Take care. Until we
You
see
too.
each other again.
Later, man.
See ya.